Welcome, everyone. This is fantastic and an absolute joy for all of us. And you're extremely welcome to this launch of the Green Hydrogen Organization. I know, I can see now that there are hundreds of you around the world. Some very distinguished colleagues I see from China, from Korea, from India, of course, Australia, Europe, Africa, US, and Latin America as well. So from all around, and that is wonderful. This session is being recorded, and we encourage you to use the chat function if you wish to put any questions to the panel. My job for now is simply to introduce our inaugural chairman, Malcolm Turnbull. And for those of you who are not Australian and know who Malcolm is, he was the Australian Prime Minister between 2015 and 2018. He was a Rhodes Scholar, a distinguished lawyer, a publisher, a journalist, an investment banker, just an extraordinary career, a class act, no doubt. And it's an absolute privilege to have Malcolm as our inaugural chairman. Over to you, Malcolm.
Well, thank you very much, Jonas. This is a momentous day. We are launching the Green Hydrogen Organization, GH2. And this is an organization with a global mission to ensure that only green hydrogen is given the recognition as being the fuel of the future, because the alternatives result in more emissions and actually tend to defeating the object of decarbonizing the global economy. Now, I want to first introduce your panel. Andew Forrest, the chairman and founder of Fortescue Metals Group and the Minderoo Foundation, among many other companies and institutions. He has also established Fortescue Future Industries, which is committed to producing 15 million tonnes of green hydrogen by 2030. He is committed to decarbonising his own company, Fortescue Metals Group, the iron ore, the third biggest iron ore miner in the world. He combines remarkable qualities, a personal passion and energy for this clean energy transition, enormous financial strength, and above all, an organization and an organizational culture which is industrial, founded on building things, managing big assets, whether it's ports, ships, trains, trucks. So he brings all of those things together in a way that I think is quite remarkable. So tackling the green hydrogen challenge is enormous. It's vital for the world. But Andew and Fortescue Future Industries have got so much to bring to that challenge. And that's why I'm delighted to be working with Andew and delighted to be the chair of this foundation. Now, a next member of the panel I introduce is President Young-Cho, the president of Hyundai. This is a remarkable, giant, global, South Korean, of course, but a global company committed to leading the charge to the hydrogen economy in every aspect of its operations, and probably for most people watching this call, particularly in transportation, in passenger vehicles, heavy vehicles. It is a passion for Hyundai, and it is one I know that we're going to see a great partnership working together with the people on this call. Next is Maria Paz de la Cruz. She is the Chief Executive Officer at H2 Chile. Chile is an absolute front runner in establishing green hydrogen markets, and she is the CEO of that Hydrogen Industry Association. Fannie Leautier. Frannie is the Managing Director at Southbridge Capital. She joins us from Kigali, Rwanda, and is going to share some reflections on the development potential of green hydrogen, because it offers extraordinary opportunities for distributed energy production and industrial development right across the world. Now, the second thing I wish to do, and before I ask my fellow board members some questions, is just to say a little bit about why I'm here. Green hydrogen, as you know, is produced by splitting water, H2O, into hydrogen and oxygen, using renewable electricity, that's zero carbon emission electricity, wind and solar typically, hydro, of course, through a process called electrolysis. And that results in zero carbon emissions. Now, this has been expensive to do in the past. It's required a lot of energy. The electrolyzer business has not really reached a mass scale. All of that has to change. And I know so many of the people on this call, and particularly on our panel, are committed to doing that. But renewable energy has never been cheaper than it is today. It never has been. We have seen the price per watt of photovoltaic cells alone come down by 95% over the last decade. Even the great developers of photovoltaic energy here in Australia, Martin Green and his team at the University of New South Wales, who developed the PERC photovoltaic module, they could not have foreseen the reduction in costs. So it's never been cheaper to produce renewable energy. And so that's the big opportunity, but we have to get onto it. We have to stop using fossil fuels, and urgently. The UN Secretary General has summed it up very well. Coal, gas and oil must be replaced before they destroy our planet. We've got to stop burning fossil fuels. Now, we believe it's feasible to supply 25% of the world's energy with green hydrogen by 2050. Hydrogen is particularly useful in two ways. Firstly, for applications like transport, where direct electricity and batteries can't do the job. I'm thinking about shipping, long-haul transport, aviation. And secondly, in heavy industries like steel, cement, fertilizer production. The Green Hydrogen Organization, GH2, aims to dramatically accelerate the uptake of green hydrogen to rapidly decarbonize these industries. So the question is not whether hydrogen is the fuel of the future, it's about how soon we can make it happen. Hydrogen is the answer, but only if it is produced with renewable energy. If hydrogen is produced from gas or coal, or with electricity generated by burning gas or coal, there is nothing clean about it. Now, the fossil fuel sector, regrettably but predictably, has a vested interest in persuading us that they can produce so-called clean or blue hydrogen by capturing the carbon dioxide emissions and storing them. Carbon capture and storage has received billions of dollars in support over many years. There were high hopes for it. I had high hopes for it when I was Australia's Environment Minister back in 2007. But it simply has not worked. It does not work consistently. In fact, it only works in very really niche areas, and it's failed. And it is essentially blue hydrogen is a delaying exercise that we have to resist. So green hydrogen is the future, and that's why we're launching this organization. We are determined, GH2 is determined, to support the building of the energy system of the future. Green hydrogen is a vastly superior technology, vastly superior fuel to fossil fuels, and it will inevitably replace them, but only if we are all committed to doing it and are not distracted and diverted by so-called clean, so-called blue hydrogen. So now over to you, Andrew. Why Fortescue Future Industries and why the Green Hydrogen Organization? Andrew, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, team, for all of your attendance around the world. Deeply honoured to have such a vast and esteemed audience. Malcolm, look, a really direct question. I came into my business life as a financier, then an industrialist, and easily the biggest thing I've ever taken on is the Fortescue Metals Group. And Malcolm and fellow panelists, team and family who are backing green hydrogen around the world, I have to admit, back in 2003, when I started the company, I didn't really know a great deal about global warming. It was starting to be spoken about, of course, but it wasn't taken seriously. And there was no societal expectations at all that you'd ever set up a huge industrial company not using oil and gas, diesel and coal. And so that's exactly what I did. As Malcolm has touched on, it's become a very, very successful organisation, one of Australia's top 10 companies. It made earnings before interest and tax of about $16 billion last year. It is an Australian success story. But what it isn't is an environmental success story. We think that the environmental awards which we've won are well deserved. They are about how we've rehabilitated the soil, how you can't tell where we've mined, just that the country's a bit richer. But there's no societal expectations that I should have had any concern about the ultimate tragedy of the commons, the ultimate race to the bottom, the ultimate pollute the environment and make wealth yourself, but don't worry about the other billions of people on this planet. And when I started to understand that, Malcolm, I became really serious about trying to understand global warming. So serious, I in fact sent myself back to school. I did a PhD in marine ecology. I began to understand that global warming literally has the oceans regurgitate its oxygen. It becomes barren, that huge species of marine life aren't fleeing or aren't hunting anymore to eat. What they're doing is they're fleeing their habitats just to breathe. And that is, of course, happening now all over the oceans. There's huge, huge evidence to this. And I know, of course, what we're seeing just in the Anthropocene, major impacts now from climate warming happening before our very eyes. So despite this financial success, I thought there is now an opportunity to use our industrial might, the fact that we are a heavy carbon emitting company, to use that as an example to drive a wedge between the argument that if you're a company which society depends upon, but you're also a heavy carbon emitter, then you have to still stay a heavy carbon emitter. And that is a fallacious argument, where we're now saying, well, if you're not a company which society depends on and you're a heavy carbon emitter, well, responsibly, you should shut down. But if you're like all those other companies which society does depend upon, then you have one responsibility now, and that's to send your emissions green. Now, there is, I think, Malcolm, a very real future for this. We have launched our own programs. I get around our organisation. You can go to any one of the half dozen plus huge operations we have. You'll see huge, of course, ships. You mentioned ports, trucks, the biggest, fastest, heaviest bulk trains in the world. Wherever you look, power stations, they're heavy carbon emitting mobility and fixed assets. And I challenged my technical team to first take on what they thought would be the most difficult, which is these huge haul trucks which have wheels much bigger than I think the size of any room which any of our audience is in right now. And I challenged them to replace the drive, the engine, with a hydrogen fuel cell. And they were able to do that in 120 days. They're able to invent the technology, the software, the drive systems, the storage, so that when I went out there, and this is a team of less than 200 people, frighteningly young, over 50% women, obviously geniuses. But when I went out there, I was staggered. I saw a normal huge haul truck start, as you do trains, or if you see a gas plant, you can't see the methane emissions, but they're huge. But, you know, with trains, you can still see the emissions. And certainly with ships, once they're out to sea, the emissions are absolutely enormous. Now, when this first truck started, there was a huge amount of noise and a huge amount of fumes of smoke. And then next to it, the world's first hydrogen fuel cell bulk truck. And I really saw a vision of the future. I saw no fumes, no smoke. And I experienced what was the sound of the future. Silence. When that huge haul truck started running on a hydrogen fuel cell, there was no noise. Yet, even under heaviest pressure, when it's RPMs, its revolutions per minute were at its highest, all you could hear was the cooling fans. And it just brought home to me that the societal expectations were not there back in 2003 when we started this company. But they are there now. And now it just takes a little bit of will. You know, I challenge all of us to not accept the 2050 figure. We've put 2030 as the date where we're going to go green as the world's first heavy emitting, carbon emitting, heavy manufacturing company to go fully green by 2030. Truthfully, I think we're going to do it earlier than that. And now I've seen the intelligence and the drive of the younger generation who have joined us to make all of this happen. And I think we now have a responsibility. The solution was not there. If I said I wanted to start with green hydrogen, I would have been laughed at, or any type of fuel apart from diesel, oil or gas. But what we know now is what you spoke of, Mr. Chairman, that renewable energy is the cheapest it's ever been and getting cheaper. Even the electrolyzers in Europe last year, they were over $1 million per megawatt. We can now build them for $200,000 per megawatt. If you look at a gigawatt scale, that's a saving of $800 million. The world is changing, Chairman, and we must encourage that. And for those who are the heavy emitters amongst us, oil or gas, heavy industry, making concrete or steel or plastic, there is now a solution. And we're driving very hard to create the solution for, yes, ourselves, so that we break that nexus. But secondly, as you've mentioned, we are committed now to 15 million tonnes of green hydrogen production to meet the Airbuses of the world and all the others who are now starting to commit to use hydrogen for their fuel systems by 2030, and in the 2030s, 50 million tonnes. That's more energy than all of Germany would require to go fully green. So we know it can be done. And Chairman, I leave you with that answer.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. Can I ask you another question? What about the critics who say that green hydrogen requires a lot of electricity? Obviously, it's a lot of renewable electricity, and they say there simply isn't enough of it to support the emergence of green hydrogen on a large scale. What's your answer to that? Firstly, it's laughter. I mean, let's just break it down. Well, hydrogen is the most common element in the universe and easily the most common element here. It's broken down from water. A lot of people say, is there enough water in the world? Well, let's use as much water as we want to make hydrogen from it, because when we use it, it just turns back into water. You know, there is Water is never lost, is it?
It's just never lost.
It just goes round in a circle.
And you purify it anyway. The purification process, whether or not it's salt water or grey water, black water, purification process is about a couple of cents per kilo, Chairman. So you're going to purify it anyway. So you can get your water from anywhere. And then secondly, energy. There's so many millions of times more renewable energy on this planet than the human race will ever need, even at the forecast of 11 or 12 billion plus. I mean, we will just know, the sun will dissolve and take us all out before we ever run out of renewable energy. That'll be the only reason, when the sun stops, and we won't have to worry about it. So, I'd say it's a smokescreen. It's like, if you like, the idea that you'll only make hydrogen from fossil fuel. Now, very senior colleagues of ours have said it's ridiculous to make hydrogen. Well, they're completely correct. If you make hydrogen from fossil fuel, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the academic papers are now being published, and we're beginning to focus in on something which the oil and gas industry hasn't wanted to speak about, and that's methane. Methane hasn't been measured. Why? Because over 100 years, it tends to degrade, not completely at all, but over 20 years, it's 80 to 90 times more powerful as a carbon pollutant than carbon itself for global warming. I mean, we're talking lethal compared to carbon. And that's over the 20-year period, which we're most concerned with, where this little planet's going to cook if we don't turn it around. So if we include methane emissions, fugitive emissions, and the fact that carbon sequestration has robbed the economies of the world of more money than any bank robber ever possibly could, then you'll realise, because it simply doesn't work. And I think, Malcolm, you were generous to say it does work in some very specific circumstances. Sir, if I am asked if my trains work or my trucks work, they have to work at 101%. No, then they work. But if they work at 80 or 90 and I just get a tick for coming second, I come last. So no, it simply doesn't work. And so we need green hydrogen to set an emissions standard for our little planet. We need it even to set a ESG standard, and we certainly need to demonstrate that it can be made abundantly and economically. And, I'm not any longer alone. I've been at this for a couple of years, but just the other day, you had Mukesh Ambani come out and say he too is going to join this. He wants to see $1 per kilo of hydrogen green in a decade. He's put $10 billion aside. I'm not lonely anymore. There's someone else who in the world is saying he's going to put in real capital as well. Importantly, he's going to put it into the ground or into the plants in the next couple of years. Where's it going? Well, photovoltaic cells. Right now, China has a very strong supply system. Reliance Industries and many others now, including ourselves, are going to create other very strong solar panel supply systems, very strong wind power supply systems, very strong hydropower supply systems. So it's starting to spread, and let's cheer this on, because quite literally, the world our children inherit depends upon it.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you. Now, the next I'd like to introduce President Young-Cho, representing Hyundai, the company of which he is president. And as I said earlier, it is leading the charge towards a global hydrogen economy. President Chi, tell us more about your company's vision for green hydrogen. How do you believe we can quickly build the supply chains and the infrastructure to enable the use of green hydrogen across many sectors, including transport and power, steel production, both domestically and internationally.
Thank you so much, Chairman Turnbull. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And see you.
Thank you. And also nice to see you again, Dr. Forrest. Your visit to Korea and Hyundai Motor Group meeting with our Chairman Chung and having wonderful dinner, sharing your vision on May 3rd was really monumental.
It was a wonderful dinner. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
and,
you.
You know, your own vision by 2028 to have hydrogen fuel cells available to the transport industry, you know, I cannot thank yourself and I cannot thank your chairman enough for your own courage, not for your commercial skill. You're some of the best in the world, not for your engineering skill. You're also some of the best in the world. But I thank you deeply for your courage.
Thank you. I often get asked, why is Hyundai Motor bringing out such large number of products using hydrogen? I believe the simple answer is that hydrogen is key to responding to climate change and for perfect transition to renewable energy. So Hyundai wants to take the lead in transition to a hydrogen society for a sustainable future. And I also want to inform you that Hyundai has been leading this fuel cell business with the world-class technology through continuous investment since 1998. That's more than 20 years of commitment. And Hyundai plans to expand the passenger class fuel cell EV lineup from currently 1 model to 3 and apply hydrogen fuel cell system to all commercial vehicle models by 2028, which is what Dr. Forrest just mentioned. So this technology will also be applied to various mobility applications such as tram, ships, and electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicle, which is used in urban air mobility, as well as also to power generation system that can supply energy to buildings and urban areas. So hydrogen energy demand will increase along with consumption growth of diverse applications such as mobility applications and fuel cell power generation. For instance, here in Korea, our government anticipates that our country's hydrogen demand from the domestic heavy-duty vehicles, such as buses and trucks and other commercial vehicles, will be 200,000 tons in less than 10 years. Consequently, this hydrogen demand will expedite the development of hydrogen technology and the construction of the hydrogen infrastructure, and hopefully it will trigger the use of hydrogen even more. So what is it that we believe that's really important for this, say, quick growth in the use of the green hydrogen? There are 3 things. First, it's necessary to make efforts to create hydrogen demand, such as fuel cell electric vehicle and fuel cell power generation. Second is to secure price competitiveness of this hydrogen, the green hydrogen, through the technological innovation, which Chairman Turnbull mentioned about the electrolysis and how we bring this price competitiveness. Third is the support of this green hydrogen trade through implementation of favorable policy. I've already mentioned about the hydrogen demand, in particular about how Korea sees it. Second is this securing price competitiveness. We must attract consumers' engagement and also facilitate industry's active investment by securing the same level of price competitiveness as fuel cell. So according to the Hydrogen Insight by the Hydrogen Council, it forecasts that the price of green hydrogen can be competitive in 2034. But this is too late. We have to expedite achieving this green hydrogen price competitiveness. So Hyundai is very actively engaged with lots of global partners in both business and technology collaboration. Last but not least is this green hydrogen trade. To solve this temporal and regional imbalance of regional energy, we need a solution that can store and transport a long distance. Hydrogen is the only option. So for green hydrogen trade, mutual cooperation and technology development between global companies and countries and institutional support that's tailored to each country's unique situation is required. So that's how Hyundai believes in how we would quickly grow the use of green hydrogen. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, President Young-Cho. Next, I'd like to introduce Maria de la Cruz de la Paz, Maria Paz de la Cruz, I beg your pardon, sorry. Maria is the CEO at H2 Chile, and she's worked in international development banks, renewable energy organizations, government institutions, and of course in the energy sector with power plants in both in Chile and the UK. So Maria, tell us some more about the outlook for green hydrogen in Chile. You must have a lot of renewable energy, so a lot of potential for green hydrogen there.
Yes, many thanks, Malcolm, for inviting me to be part of this panel. As you may know, Chile was called the hidden champion by the World Energy Council in Germany 2019. And during the same year, the International Energy Agency placed it as one of the most competitive countries to produce green hydrogen. As you have mentioned, Chile has huge potential of renewable sources, especially solar and wind. The Atacama solar irradiation is one of the best in the world, and Patagonian winds are as strong as the ones from the North Sea in Europe. Yeah. The renewable energy potential is 70 times the current national grid capacity. But apart from great natural resources to develop a market, you need the implementation of sound policies, and fortunately, Chile has done a good job on that sense. The country has implemented very successful policies to increase the percentage of renewable energy in the electricity matrix. Also, it has committed to become carbon neutral by 2050, and this was established in the Chile's NDC, where green hydrogen application accounts for 21% of the total reduction, total emission, total required emission reductions. And at the end of 2021, the government launched, at the end of last year, the government launched the National Hydrogen Strategy, establishing ambitious targets for production and export of green hydrogen in 2025 and 2030. Nowadays, the government is also working on an energy transition bill to set, among others, an obligation to blend gas and green hydrogen in the gas grid. Chile wants to produce the green hydrogen most competitive of the planet by 2030. This is to decarbonize our energy matrix and to support the world transition by providing a renewable, competitive, and clean fuel such as green hydrogen. The country has many initiatives to produce green hydrogen. We are very happy for that. And we have seen different volumes and maturity levels. And the mining sector, fortunately, is taking a lead on it. Last month, Anglo American started hydrogen mining vehicles operation with the inauguration of a green hydrogen generation plant. The mining has a strategic location in the north of the country and very close to big renewable energy sources. Major operations are in the north of Chile, where the best solar radiation in the world is. And therefore, this industry will have the access to low energy costs and thus to competitive mining activities with very low carbon emissions. Projects in the north are mainly focused on supplying this industry, of course, but you also can find other projects in the central area. Those projects are smaller and mainly focused to cover domestic demand for blending or mobility mainly. And the projects in the Patagonia, that's in the south of Chile, are focused on export of green derivatives such as ammonia or methanol. These projects are also at big scale. But you might ask, what is needed to mobilize all these projects? Well, in my view, the most important is the price. Currently, green hydrogen, of course, is not competitive compared with gray hydrogen or to burn fossil fuels. So it's difficult to find long-term off-takers willing to take production at high prices now to get lower prices in the future. This is an important issue that only some specific off-takers are willing to pay right now. The green hydrogen needs to be clearly differentiated from gray or other colors. This is a premium fuel because of its carbon footprint on its production and also in its usage. To implement a mechanism such as green hydrogen certification could be crucial for the successful development of this market. As I mentioned before, Chile has huge renewable energy potential and the possibility to produce green hydrogen, most competitive of the planet. Many initiatives are currently underway. As I mentioned, there is a very favorable ecosystem for project, but we need the soon development of a price differentiated global market, I think. To get this, I think public and private collaboration is imperative, of course, and initiatives like this, the Green Hydrogen Organization, plays definitely a crucial role on this market creation. So I'm very happy to be here. Many thanks for the invitation.
Well, thank you very much, Maria. Chile is, as you say, a global leader in green hydrogen, and we're looking forward to working with you, but particularly in unlocking the potential for green hydrogen right across Latin America and the Caribbean. Next, I'd like to introduce Fannie Leautier, the Managing Director at Southbridge Capital. And as I said earlier, Fannie joins us from Kigali, Rwanda. Previously, Fannie's career has included time at the World Bank, including Chief of Staff to the President and Vice President. She was also Senior Vice President at the African Development Bank. Welcome, Fannie. As Andrew mentioned, Green Hydrogen Organization, GH2, has another long-term goal. Globally, almost 800 million people lack access to electricity of any kind. Addressing this has to be a priority using renewable energy and green hydrogen, and without perpetuating a dependence on fossil fuels. And I know we all welcomed President Xi Jinping's commitment that China would stop funding coal-fired power stations overseas. But Fannie, tell us more about your work on energy development, green hydrogen.
Thank you very much, Chairman Turnbull, and it's great to be here today for the launching of the Green Hydrogen Organization. I think one of the unique features about Africa as a continent is that it is rich in all the potential sources of renewable energy. And of course, it also has some of the important opportunities to do things differently because there's such a huge gap in the demand side for electricity, for energy in general, and the supply side. So if you look at the opportunity space and the work that we do at Southbridge is to help countries and companies to think about what would be their energy transition, their energy pathway, and particularly to think about the opportunities that they can bring in because they are able to do it. I take the example of telecommunications in Africa because there were very few fixed lines. It was very expensive to actually extend the fixed line telecommunications to all the people who needed it. The continent very easily leapfrogged into mobile telecommunications and all the innovations that ensued from that. So when you look at the energy space, you see opportunities in similar ways. To start with, cooking fuel. 95% of people in Africa today use charcoal and wood for cooking, and it has very, very serious impacts on health and of course on the carbon footprint, and not to mention the deforestation. And as we know, forests are also very important as a carbon sink. So Africa has a unique opportunity to deal with the cooking energy or cooking fuel challenge in a different way. And I see here, for example, how much value has already been generated by replacing charcoal and wood with natural gas. So imagine the value that can be created by them going from natural gas to green hydrogen. So that is one example of an area where by thinking differently and bringing in new opportunities, the continent can leapfrog into new ways of conceiving the energy solution. The second area, which is very critical, is most countries in Africa are now going through their industrialization strategies, which include building manufacturing plants, following up on the trunk infrastructure, and bringing in all the logistics solutions that come along with that. That means construction, that means manufacturing, that means mobility and logistics, all very heavy fuel dependent. So when I look at the opportunity space again for green hydrogen, particularly in the cement industry, which is so critical, and I think Dr. Forrest already mentioned that in how he is in his company and his activities trying to transition into using green hydrogen for that aspect of heavy metals, and in this case, in the cement side, manufacturing of cement could be one of the key sectors that drives the transformation in Africa. The second area, and of course, then when you look at the mobility side, when you get a fleet of water transport on the oceans for cargo in particular, and these cargo solutions can also be generating green hydrogen as they go across the ocean, transporting goods, benefiting from solar power and other such solutions. So one could think very differently also about that. The other area is food and nutrition. Agriculture is one of the key sectors that Africa is driving in terms of productivity and yields, and looking also to deal with the climate-related risks from drought. And therefore, fertilizers play a very big role in the overall development of the continent, and particularly on meeting several of the Sustainable Development Goals. And again, fertilizer is a good sector to benefit from using green hydrogen, and therefore could be another area that would bring a lot of potential in thinking through how to do things differently. And then finally, I wanted to mention the fact that there is an energy transition, and each country has a different energy mix. And I think Maria already mentioned it in the case of Chile, and how compared to the existing sources of energy generation, hydrogen is still at a price point that is higher, and the price needs to come down to make it more generally available and affordable. And that will come as the demand for hydrogen increases and as the innovation around using it also increases. But for the current way in which energy is being distributed and stored, I think there is an opportunity, for example, to then retool and refit the distribution infrastructure, for example, for gas, because that can then, with cleaning and proper changes from an engineering and refitting or retooling perspective, also become available for use for hydrogen. And therefore the transition shouldn't be too difficult if the infrastructure is already in place. And I think if we focus then on the demand side, on the innovations, and on bringing the solutions in critical sectors, agriculture, construction, manufacturing, transport and logistics, this will be an area where Africa could really even lead in the coming years. And then the last comment will be on urbanization. And I was very keen to listen to the comments made by the other panelists, where if you think about the energy uses for new constructions and new buildings in cities, that could be another area to be very innovative around thinking how hydrogen could be brought into that value chain, and therefore then opening up even more opportunities. So I think this is a good time to be bringing those innovative ideas and thinking, particularly for those who are not yet served, how the energy solution could include green hydrogen and use it as an opportunity to transform the way Africa did with mobile telephony. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Franny. Thank you to all the panelists. Before I open up for questions, Jonas Moberg, the CEO of the Green Hydrogen Organisation, is going to tell us a bit more about what the GH2 will do.
Thank you, Malcolm, Andrew, and everyone. It really is an extraordinary privilege to have been given the tasks that we have. And I know I speak for Melanie, for Sam, for Joe, for Ines, and the ones that have already joined the team, that these are, we have the best jobs we think there are. This is such a meaningful and important task. We have 3 focus areas as an organization. We want to be one of those entrepreneurial, light touch, fast moving, small international organizations that support bigger organizations such as the World Bank, other international development institutions, private sector, and governments. And essentially, we want to do this along 3 strands. Franny spoke a lot about the development dimension, and we are through this launching the Green Hydrogen Development Plan. And that has the clear purpose of bringing together the IFIs and other development actors, because we will need a lot of involvement of those to help fund the transition in developing countries. We need concessionary funding, but we also need their role to help build the political risks and climate management that is needed to make this happen in developing countries. So that's a first clear strand. Secondly, an industry peak body, if you like, as some Australians might say. We do need to bring together, to share the lessons that we've heard from Hyundai today. We need to share those across the world. Here, we can work together with the Green Hydrogen Catapult that has already done some of this work, but we need to scale that up and work much larger across the globe in that way by bringing the industry together. Thirdly, governments. There is already some work here, but we need to accelerate and lift that. We need to share plans, good strategies. We need to show how incredibly subsidizing we still are of the fossil fuel industry. We need to give green hydrogen and renewables a fair chance. And we need to point out that there is some course direction that needs to happen here. And that in many places, we can't at the same time promote green hydrogen and renewables and things like blue hydrogen. I'm sorry, but the 2 are at times mutually exclusive. Malcolm, one key area where we already started is the green hydrogen standard. We need a standard here. And there's a lot of work that has been done by academics for more than a decade on greenhouse gas emissions. We want to bring in that work in a bigger framework. As Andrew said, we also need to look at the wider ESG picture here. We need to ensure that our projects, that whether we build renewable energy plants or turbines, whatever, that human rights are absolutely respected, that scarce water is managed properly, and so on. So we need to look at making sure that we absolutely minimize the downside. And lastly, with that standard, we also need to maximize the upside. And with that, I mean, we need to make sure that the sustainable development goals are being addressed with projects, that they have a wider development impact, that the big banks and so on, when they go to fundamentally their shareholders, their taxpayers and so on that are behind them, that projects in this space is truly bringing development in a wider way.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Jonas. The first International Green Hydrogen Summit and Assembly, that's going to be between 17 and 18 May next year in Barcelona in Spain. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. No, thank you very much. No, we're delighted that it will happen there. What what it will be, Malcolm and everyone, is a combination. We hope that it will be a new kind of meeting, which is a combination of a assembly with significant representatives from governments and elsewhere that are sharing lessons, and an opportunity for the private sector, a trade fair, if you like, to demonstrate their projects. And there is, of course, so much happening now, as we've heard Andrew and the president from Hyundai say, on the technological side. So there is a great need to bring that together, and also, as I said, to merge that commercial demonstration with the policy conversation amongst governments. And we do hope that the assembly and meeting will be if you like, an opportunity to demonstrate that commitments made here in New York during this week, a high-level energy dialogue of the UN, and of course at COP26 in Glasgow in just 6 weeks' time or so, that many of those commitments that we will, by the summit in Barcelona, we will have concrete actions to show for us, to show that it's not just talk, but that we actually hold ourselves to account to progress and target set.
Very good, thank you. Well, I think, Jonas, now we should encourage and accept and answer some questions. Have we got some questions there? I think Sam was managing that, is that right?
Yes, he should be, and let's see. In the meantime, while we check that, why don't you see if the panelists might have questions to each other?
Yeah, sure. Any questions from the panel to each other?
Thank you. If I could, to Hyundai, your move to be such a front runner globally in mobility using green hydrogen, when did that start and what inspired it?
The hydrogen came about in 1998. So as I said during my brief talk, over 20 years ago. And the reason was because in the cutthroat automotive industry, it was hard to differentiate. And then the chairman, who is now the honorary chairman of our group, set a agenda and showed a vision that it will be a long-term investment, but we need to move ahead of other car manufacturers, because Hyundai is relatively new kid on the block when it comes to car industry. So it was always a fast follower. And the honorary chairman wanted to be game changer, early mover. So he said it will take 20, 30 years before all cars will be driven by hydrogen. But we want to make sure we develop this ability ahead of others. So that's how it all got started. And one of the good things about it is that unlike most of the Western companies or car makers where there is pressure for quarterly earnings, because it was more or less family-owned public company, the chairman had this, let's say, vision and kept his commitment for over 20 years, while other car manufacturers that you are aware of, like BMW, GM, and others, have given up because it hurts the bottom line. And Hyundai was not afraid of that short-term bottom line. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, it's look, I only know your chairman, not your honorary chairman, but I am not surprised. Clearly the DNA of vision and of courage goes straight between the two of them. I'd just like to say to everyone speaking and everyone who's watching, you'll all know captains of industry, and if you can inspire them to have the same courage. Right now, they don't need the same vision. The green hydrogen message and answer is clear to the world. Not everyone has seen it, but I ask leaders everywhere to see the clarity of the message and have the courage to follow it.
Malcolm, we've had a couple of questions, but now one, maybe you can see them maybe also as well that have come up here in chat.
Yeah,
there is, for example, one to Andrew. Could you please talk about how your value system has influenced your leadership style and your role as an agent of change, if possible, in the context of interpersonal relations and mobilizing people to tackle the shared challenge of climate change? Asks Thomas from Chile.
Hi, Thomas from Chile. I think with that kind of question, you should apply to us for our work, because that's a very insightful question, and we're looking for fantastic people for our projects in Chile. But I can say values are everything to our organization. The reason why, Thomas, we could appoint you to make many decisions for us in Chile without you having to check in or even get permission is that the values which you would subscribe to and you would promise to run with and make every decision through and communicate with colleagues and be who you are. The reason why we can sleep easily at night, even though you're on the other side of the world, and know you're going to make the right decisions, is because of those values. And I think those values, while making you a better human, also makes you a much better business person and a much better executive. And, you know, when we say, look, have a brave, crazy plan A, but a bulletproof plan B, that's just a fantastic thing to live your life through, but also to run a business with. And, you know, I love the South Americas, Latin America, Africas, because I see the winds of change happening. You know, these, as Maria has pointed out, as Franny has pointed out, in these fabulous continents, they have enormous solar, wind, renewable energy, hydropower, and we'll see a transition. If the oil and gas industry is not successful, and we must all push back on it with their fake hydrogen, which, you know, I call anything which isn't green fake, with their fake clean hydrogen, if they're not successful and green hydrogen takes hold the way it really should and the way it must over the world, then you'll see the democratization of wealth. You'll see the democratization of economic growth. These huge continents and countries which have such massive populations will see their populations now participate in the energy paradigm of the future. No longer will it be just concentrated in a few small powers. It can be spread throughout Latin America. It can be spread throughout Africa, and lift and be the economic green hydrogen tide that lifts all the countries. So I must say I've traveled the world during the COVID pandemic twice, and I've visited 62 countries, and I'm never more excited than when I visit a developing country. It has huge green resources and the willpower to develop and the leadership to develop those assets, because you know that country is going to grow the way it can, which is sustainable.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Malcolm, can I come in with something?
Yes, please.
Great. So there have been a couple of questions here about how are we interacting with governments and various initiatives so far. On that one, and also some other questions related to other initiatives and organizations that promote hydrogen. On the first one, we are starting small, building a network with organizations that at national level promote hydrogen or fuel cell associations. And of course, we have one of them represented here today through Maria and the Chilean one. We are, however, clear in that we represent and stand for the promotion of green hydrogen. And some organizations are less committed to that. And we hope that they will support our cause and then that we will work together. But what we will not do along the way is to lend our support to so-called transition pathways via clean hydrogen that in actual fact means that we are prolonging the use of fossil fuel-based hydrogen. And some of the clean hydrogen pathways define clean hydrogen as having as much as 6 kilos of emissions, methane slippage excluded, per kilo of hydrogen. So 6 CO2 kilos out for 1 kilo hydrogen. We cannot call that clean, and let's be clear about that. In preparing for this launch, this is one of the things we wrote in the launch report that you'll find online that we have, I don't know how to show it, but anyway, that we have done setting out our mission, and where you have quotes by the president from Hyundai, by Malcolm, by Andrew, by Fannie and Maria, and also in much greater detail set out what we do. We are in one of the forwards spelling out that we've sometimes been asked whether another organization is needed. To this, I have the following reply. The world is overheating. Despite the commitments to cut greenhouse gas emissions, the emissions continue to grow. In fact, last week, there's a new report out saying that they're growing a lot more and will continue to grow a lot more than we thought until recently. So I guess there are so vast interests also in continuing to promote the fossil fuel-based industry. All of those things lead me to believe there are not too many organizations that are promoting green hydrogen or renewable energy. There aren't anywhere near enough. And we just have to be very smart and deft at how we go about our task.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Well, do we have any other questions? If not, I think probably we should bring this launch to a close. I want to thank everyone. And
Thomas Luxemburg.
Sorry, Andrew?
Look, I just wanted to take the opportunity, Malcolm, to I've been getting other questions, but just take the opportunity to really thank you in case you close it off. Okay. I'd have to say to everyone who doesn't know, put your prime ministership on the line over this issue many, many years ago. That is selfless leadership. That's not politics. That's why you put people into politics so they can lead. And I'd just like all the audience around the world to know that Malcolm has been a true leader and one convicted very wisely to this cause and very courageously to this cause. And I'd like to thank you on behalf of everyone, Malcolm, for your leadership.
Oh, well, Andrew, thank you. And all of those sentiments I return to you and indeed to our other panelists and all the people we're directors of the organisation, the people we're working with. This is a vital cause. I mean, the one thing that is very clear is that we are running out of time. You know, that's all of the political blather and argy-bargy and vested interests and diversions and, conspiracy theories, all of the stuff that has derailed climate action for so long cannot change the physics. And, so when people say they believe or don't believe in global warming, it's like saying you believe or don't believe in gravity. So this cause is vital, it is existential, but above all, it is absolutely critically urgent. And that's why we need to get on with it. So thank you, Andrew, for your leadership. Thank you to our fellow panelists and directors. Thank you, Jonas. and your team. And we will, the most important thing is that the Green Hydrogen Organisation engages widely, that we make alliances and connections and partnerships, because we are actually, what we are in the Green Hydrogen Organisation is the business of global advocacy. We are in the business of persuading people of the urgency of the challenge, of the need to have policies that support green hydrogen as opposed to grey or blue or fake hydrogen, fake green hydrogen. We've got to have that commitment, and we've also got to work with civil society, industry, big companies, Hyundai, FMG, big, governments, literally right across the board. We've got to get this message across about green hydrogen, because basically what has happened, and this is others may have a different perception, but the reality is when you put hydrogen into a fuel cell, the emission, as we know, is water. And so people said, oh, that's fantastic. Instead of pumping out CO2 or carbon monoxide or whatever, it's water. That's terrific. And they failed to take into account the fact that of what comes before. And so that's, as we've seen, been some big, research reports published recently, blue hydrogen, so-called, actually ends up producing more emissions, as Jonas was saying earlier, than you would have had if you just burnt the fossil fuel from which it was made in the first place. So this is the cause. It's an existential one. And I just want to thank everyone for their involvement and their participation, and look forward to their support. So thank you. And Jonas, is there anything you want to add? That's it?
That's it. That's
good.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you all very much. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night from me, anyway.
and good day. And the Green Hydrogen Organisation is launched. Well
it
done.
is launched. Yes, it's off and running.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Good
Cheers.
night.